Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtham Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nanda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome everyone this evening to our very beautiful Shishi Radha Kalachandji temple. Thank you. So, lights come. Oh, okay. Okay. This teaches us a very important lesson. What does it teach us? These are the holy scriptures which we can't understand on our own. This is Guru who gives us light and gives us mercy sometimes. No harm. No harm. But this is the Guru who gives the mercy, his blessings in the form of the light, by whose grace the words of the scriptures are easy to be decoded or deciphered. We can't read it. We can read the text, but we may not be able to understand the purport. But by taking shelter of the light, the wisdom given by Sri Guru, then everything becomes clear. So. No, that's okay. No. Yeah. And then that's what a proud person does, like me. He tries to read the scriptures without the light. So we'll read from the 14th text of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. This chapter is entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. So we'll first read the text, then the translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Please kindly repeat. Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantash Cha Dridavratah Namasyantascha Mam Bhaktya Nityayukta Upasate Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantascha Dridavratah Namasyantascha Mam Bhaktya Nityayukta Upasate Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantascha Dridavratah Namasyantascha Mam Bhaktya Nityayukta Upasate. Please kindly chant. Anyone else? Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Purport. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising his holy name, his eternal form, his transcendental qualities, and his uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things, therefore a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who is attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahma Jyoti, is not described as Mahatma in the Bhagavad Gita. He is described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or human being. That is devotion. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho, and Smaranam, remembering him. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve, at the ultimate end, the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily, and vocal, everything in the service of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. That is called full Krishna consciousness. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on certain days, like the 11th day of the moon, Ekadashi, and on the appearance day of the Lord. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission into the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world. The Mahatmas, great souls, strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they are sure to achieve the desired result. As described in the 2nd verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder or as a sannyasi or brahmachari, in any position and anywhere in the world, and he can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus actually become Mahatma, a great soul. Hare Krishna. Just so that I know who's present here, I would like to ask a question. How many of us are chanting Hare Krishna, even if that's one round? Okay. And how many of us have come to the temple for the first time today? How many of us have come for the first time in their life to this temple? Okay. Welcome. Thank you. This holy text called as the Bhagavad Gita has been profusely described by all great acharyas. Sripad Adi Shankaracharya has described Bhagavad Gita kinjida dhita Ganga jalalava kanika pita sakrid eva murari samarcha kriyate tasya na yamena charcha. He describes Bhagavad Gita kinjida dhita. If somebody can study this text even a little bit every day and meditate, not speculate, but meditate and contemplate on what they have read, and Ganga jalalava kanika pita, and can drink little bit of the sanctified holy Ganges water every day, and Sakrid eva murari samarcha, and if they can worship Krishna in the form of the deity Shri Radha Kalachandji once every day, then kriyate tasya na yamena charcha. They will have no discussion with the god of death, Yamaraj. So one has to read the Bhagavad Gita and contemplate and practice in life, and at the same time drink the holy waters of the Ganga and worship Krishna. It's quite interesting. Out of these three, all three of them are important, but Sripad Adi Shankaracharya places the study of Bhagavad Gita first in the order of priority. Also, in another place he says, Gita Geyam Nama Sahasram Dhyayam Shripati Rupamajashram, which means one should try, the spiritual aspirant, the devotee should try to meditate on the form of Krishna in his heart. But before that, he should try to chant thousands of holy names of God, so that the heart is cleansed where he can meditate on the form. But before that, Gita Geyam, one should read the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Adi Shankaracharya says, first read the Gita, then contemplate on the meaning and chant the holy name, purify your heart, and in that heart contemplate and meditate on the form of God. How beautiful. All the great acharyas, Sripad Ramanujacharya, Sripad Madhvacharya, Sripad Adi Shankaracharya, Sripad Vallabhacharya, and coming down our Gaudiya tradition also, all great wonderful acharyas have commented on the Bhagavad Gita and kept this scripture on top, not just of their heads, but on top of their lives. This text has 18 chapters, spanned over 699 verses. That's 700 verses. And it has variety of topics. But there's one thing that Krishna mentions throughout the Bhagavad Gita, and that is the importance of lovingly serving him as a devotee. I have a humble request to make, if that's okay. We want to make sure that the discussion is as conducive as possible for everyone. So if you feel there's something that's distracting you, you can kindly help me out. So in the Bhagavad Gita, although topics of karma, jnana, dhyan, meditation, so many things have been mentioned. There's one thing that Krishna mentions throughout, and that is the importance of bhakti. Bhakti has been defined differently by different acharyas, but there's one definition that is considered to be the king of all definitions, and that is Anya bhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. Our Rupa Goswami Pad has written, make all your decisions, make all your attempts in such a way that it's favorable to your progress and advancement towards the lotus feet of God. The mind, when it is polluted and contaminated and restless, it oscillates like waves. And sometimes it lets us overdo something, and sometimes it makes us so lazy that we don't even want to think about doing it. It's because we are moving according to the oscillations of the mind. Sometimes we are over-enthusiastic, and sometimes we are depressed. Sometimes we feel very happy, and sometimes we are morose and we are crying and we are blaming everyone around. Sometimes we get so angry and we get envious and we are impelled by the movement of lust and anger and envy in the playground of the mind. And at other times, we are proud and we are taking credit. Either we are criticizing others and giving them the blame, or we are taking their credit and causing it to our pride. All of this can be overcome if the mind can be purified. With a purified mind, decision-making ability is much better. Now the question is, if we have to surrender all our activities and all our decision-making favorable to the lotus feet of God, how do we purify that mind? What are the ways by which we can purify our mind? There are a few ways by which we can purify the mind. But the topmost according to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a very great, exalted, saint-like incarnation of God, who appeared 550 years ago, he mentioned that the best process to purify the mind, to bring it to a point of equilibrium, where our decision-making, our clarity is perfect in life, it is by calling out on the holy names of God. You personally call out the holy names of God in isolation, in a solitary place, that is called japa. It's the repetition of a mantra, a special spiritual sound mantra that you repeat again and again. And at the same time, we can collectively come together and loudly call out on the names of God. That is called Sankirtan. Now sometimes our mind may trick us. Hey, what is this? Just go on repeating a certain mantra? Is this a path of self-hypnosis? Where you're, kind of getting hypnotic by just repeating a mantra? No. It is a path of purifying the mind. Now in this world, just to give a little example, we see the importance that sound has in our life. Like for example, how many of us love to hear the chirping of the birds early in the morning? How many of us love to hear the very beautiful, wonderful sound of the flow of the river as you're sitting on the banks of the river, maybe on a very favorable rock, and you're listening to the sweet sound of the flowing river? How many of us love to hear this? Just the movement of the flow of the river in the morning, or the chirping of the birds, or the sound of the mic. Maybe Krishna doesn't want me to speak anymore. Nonetheless, we can still continue. Till the time the mic comes in. Is it audible for everyone at the back? No? Not quite? Now? Thank you. See, I told you we need guru. We can't do it on our own. So we love to hear the chirping of the birds. We love to hear the flowing of the river. And how many of us love to hear soft classical music, whether it's Indian classical, Western classical? It kind of soothes our mind. The effect that sound has on our consciousness is beyond a doubt proven by science. At the same time, when you hear some chiseling sound, some sound of drilling through an iron rod, or honking of the horns, or someone screaming on a microphone, it sends shivers down our spine. We don't want that sound. Sound has positive effect and negative effect on our consciousness. And not just human beings. Let's see how fundamental this is. Just stand under a tree and clap your hands and look at what happens to the birds out there. The birds don't even know we exist. The birds don't see us. But just by the sudden clapping of our palms, what happens to the birds? They fly away. It instills a sense of fear in the heart of the birds who are living in the nests of those trees. What to speak of birds? Let's go to animals. How many of you love pets? Right. So, okay, let's change the question. How many of us love animals? Okay, a few more hands. Okay. Let's say if you have a pet dog, how do you think the dog's going to respond when you actually lovingly call him by the name, and you speak something sweet to him? He's going to wag his tail and come to you, right? And that goes through all species. You can see in the Vedic text called as Srimad Bhagavatam, our Krishna, who's holding a flute, he would play on the flute and he would attract everything around. You see, he's playing the flute here and attracting the cows by the millions. The cows would all come running to him as soon as he played the flute. Not just the cows, even the newly born calves. They would leave the mother's milk and run to drink the nectar of Krishna's flute sound. Then it is described by the sound of his flute. Even trees would move from end to end just by the sound of his flute. And he would play so many different harmonics and so many different melodies. Of course, I have no idea of music, but I'm just making up stuff. He would play the higher octaves and the lower octaves and the Shuddha Swaras, the Komal Swaras and the Tivra Swaras and all of the mixture of the different ragas. And as he would play these notes, it is described sometimes he was even capable of touching the hearts of the clouds. And the clouds would pour rain even amidst summer afternoons when it's supposed to be, it's predicted, the weather prediction is hot. It's going to be over 100 Fahrenheit. But the rains start in. It's a misty rain, comforting the environment in Vrindavan, because Krishna, through his flute, touches the heart of the clouds. What to speak of clouds and what to speak of trees? It's described when Krishna plays the flute, the creepers would flower into flowers and blossom into fruits just by hearing the sound of Krishna's flute. And it's not something that's imaginative or a figment of our imagination or something that's fictional. You can see even in this world, when two plants are taken and one plant is exposed to very sweet classical music and another plant of the same species category is exposed to very harsh sound. And this is research proven. A scientist, he took two plants of the same species, and to one plant he started yelling and screaming and hurling abuses. I don't like you, I hate you, I wish and pray you die. Things like this. And to the other plant he was saying things like, you're so beautiful, your leaves are so tender, the fruits and the flowers are so good, the flowers are so fragrant, I wish you live 1,000 years, I love you so much. Now the plant doesn't know the language that he's speaking in, but just the emotion carried through that sound. According to the scientific research, it was proven that the plant which was exposed to very harsh hurling abuses, it died very soon. But the plant which was exposed to sweet music and sweet words and tender-hearted, affectionate words, that plant lived longer and lived happier and healthier. The great example in the Solomon Islands, where trees exist over 1,000 years, and the villagers don't want these trees. They have no tools and apparatus by which they could uproot these trees. So they just join hands around the tree and start saying, I hate you. We just pray and hope you die soon. What are you doing alive for such a long time? And that tree, which has been living through so many centuries, which can't be uprooted by any apparatus or any tools, dries up in as early as 3 weeks just by the hurling of abusive words. Whether it's plants, whether it's trees, whether it's animals, cows, humans, the effect of sound is of fundamental significance in all lives. Let's just ask ourselves, when someone comes and insults us, criticizes us, rebukes and admonishes us, do you want to meet that person again? You always remember, this is the person who yelled at me in that Kalachandji temple. This is the person who yelled at me at the doorway. Somehow our mind is trained such that we forget all the sweet things sweet people have spoken to us, and we end up remembering only those abusive words. And when someone comes and actually speaks nicely to us consistently every single time you see them, our heart gets fonder towards that person and starts going away from the person who's hurling abuses. Yes or yes? So true. This is how sound works in our lives. We like people who speak nicely to us. We like people who use the right words at the right time, in the right spirit. We like people who converse well with us. In this world, even when hunters have to hunt deer in the forest, they play on the flute. The hunter plays the flute, and the flute sound attracts the deer, and the deer comes close to the hunter, forgets that that's a deer and that's a hunter, and he's actually playing the flute to attract me. The deer becomes so vulnerable, starts licking the feet of the hunter and moving around the hunter like a honeybee hovers over a lotus flower. And then, when the hunter stops playing the flute, reality hits straight on the head of the deer, and the deer feels, oh no, This is death for me. I better run away. And then the hunter plays the flute again, and the deer becomes a victim again. Whether it's the cows, whether it's the birds, whether it's the plants or the trees in Solomon Islands, whether it's the deer or whether it's the human beings, we see the fundamental significant effect of sound. How do we wake up early in the morning, every morning? Alarm clocks. They work on the fact that they ring. Imagine somebody comes and just keeps a little paper next to us. Wake up. Somebody just writes on a piece of paper, please wake up, and keeps it next to our pillow. You think that's going to wake us up? But as soon as the alarm clock starts to ring, that sound wakes us up from our sleep. A Japanese scientist, in the lines of our discussion, a Japanese scientist published a research paper on the effect of sound on human minds. And then he felt inspired to take it ahead and work on the effect of sound on water. Now, in ancient Vedic culture, in the ancient roots of India, there's a saying that if water is kept exposed to air for a long time, don't drink that water. Now, somebody would think that's just superstitious. Come on, there's nothing wrong. Like if I keep a cup of water out on the dining table and maybe I drink it 2 hours later, what's going to be, there's no negative effect to that. What is it going to do to me? Our so-called scientific mind could think about it like that. And we would term the age-old practice to be superstitious. But this Japanese scientist, he proved, he took 2 bowls of water, and water collected from the same source. He took 2 bowls of water, and he froze both of them to the same temperature for as many days as he could. But just before he did that, to one bowl, he spoke very sweet words for 15 minutes. And to another bowl of water, as we previously said, he was hurling abuses. And he froze both these bowls under same temperature for as many days as he did. Same source of water, similar bowls, similar temperature in the same place. And after he removed those bowls and he examined the crystal structure on the surface of water under a microscope, he saw that the bowl which was exposed to hurling abusive words, the structure on the surface of that ice was disoriented. The pattern was not organized. But that bowl of water which was exposed to very sweet words, it formed a very nice crystal diamond structure of perfect organization. And the Japanese scientist published this paper, and he said, if this is the effect of sound on water, what can we say on the effect of sound on a human mind? There's a request that if we all can get close to each other, not just in hearts, but also in bodies, and come closer, so that there's little more space for those who wish to come in. Just discussing about sound makes us progress in life, right? It takes us closer to God. There's also space here if you want to push in and kind of reconfigure the universe a bit. Now we want to do a little activity and ask a little question. What are the 5 things you can do with mud, earth element? Can we see it? Can we see mud? Can we see the earth element? Yes. Can we smell the fragrance or the dirt? Can we hear when someone walks on it? Can we taste? Can we also take some mud and touch it and feel? So it is described. The earth element can be approached through all 5 senses. Namely, the eyes, you can see it, you can smell it, you can taste it, you can hear and also feel. But the next element that you see after earth is water. One thing goes off in water, and what is that? You can smell water. We can taste, we can hear sound through water, we can feel it on our hand, and we can see. With earth, we can do all five. You can see, you can smell, you can taste, you can touch and feel. But with water, you can do four. What are the four things that you can do with water? You can see, you can taste, you can hear sound through water and feel it on the skin. But we can't smell. Now in the next element is fire. You can do only three things with it and you can do two things. What are they? We can see, then think. Can you taste? Depending on who's cooking. So with respect to fire, you can do only three things and you can do two. You can smell and you can't. You can see the structure of fire and you can hear the split splat in the fire, and you can also feel the heat, but you can't taste it on the tongue and you can't smell. You go another element, that's air. Now you can do only two things with it and you can do three things with it. What are the two things we can do with air? We can feel and you can hear. But what are the three things you can't? That's right. Now going ahead to one more element. That's ether. You can do only one thing with it. Hear. When you go in outer space, you can't even feel, you just can hear. That's it. So with ether you can hear. But with air, you still can hear and something. With fire you can hear and something more. With water you can hear and something more. And as far as the earth element is concerned, you can hear and something more. The fundamental point we are trying to make, if there's one thing that passes through all five elements, that is the sense of hearing, sound. And this is why, even in the Bible, in the beginning there was sound. Sound. Even from the scientific perspective, those who are atheistic, the scientists say everything started with a big bang, sound. We are all going to the same point of sound from different angles of logical decipherence. Are we all there on the same page? This is the effective sound. Now, if this is the effective material sound, according to Patanjali, in this school of yoga, he explains sound works on 4 levels. Sound works on 4 levels. There is the first sound called as para. It comes from the Mooladhara chakra. For those who are from the yogic school, this comes from the Mooladhara chakra, from the base. And that passes through the pran shakti, the desire. As soon as, before we go, there are steps. We just don't blurp out whatever we can. Some of us do, but most of us don't. The way it continues is, first, the fundamental level of sound is called para. That passes through pran shakti, the life air. Then the second is called pashyanti. It passes through mind. Then the third is called madhyama. It passes through buddhi or intelligence. And finally, what comes out through the throat is called vaikhari. So everything that we speak passes through these subtle elements, and then it comes out in the physical sound that we hear. So this is the effective sound. How fundamental and how subtle it is. Even in the development of the child in the womb, it is described by the doctors and articles on embryology that the first sense that develops in the child in the womb is the sense of hearing. Therefore, even in the spiritual schools it is described, when someone's pregnant, that mother should speak good things so that the child inside can feel happy and secure. Not smoke a cigarette. So the first thing that develops in the womb for the child is the sense of hearing. And the last thing that leaves the body of a dying man is the sense of his hearing. He may not be able to see. He may not be able to analyze something logically. But if you sit next close to him and you say something kind, he still can process because he is hearing. He or she is hearing. Therefore, this sense of sound is so fundamental, whether it's through science, whether it's through logic and reasoning, whether it's through the yogic school of Patanjali, and then what to speak on the field of bhakti. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. And finally, sarvatma snapanam param vijayate. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, the effect of spiritual sound is so profound that it cleanses the mind. The fundamental question that we started our discussion with. We make mistakes in life. Like, for example, many years ago, I come from Mumbai. Many years ago, when the Sahara International Airport was built in Mumbai, it was a big news in the newspaper that this airport has been created and it's, fabulous. Very soon after that, the Sahara International Airport was again in the headlines because one of the managers had shot his boss with a gun during work. Why? Because the boss did not approve the employee of a leave, a break. He didn't give him a holiday. So this employee got so angry, he just took his revolver and he was arrested. Very close to India is Nepal. Many years ago in the Nepal royal family, there was a headline news, very sad. 8 members in that royal family were murdered just in a fit of rage. All of this is happening because of an uncontrolled mind. Uncontrolled mind. You can see even in the texts like Mahabharata, you have 2 personalities. On one end you have Yudhishthir, who materially did not have anything. He didn't have a place to stay. He was in the forest. He was in exile. He didn't have anything to eat. He had to go through so many calamities and so many troubles. On the other hand, you have a personality called Duryodhan. How many of us want to be like Duryodhan? Very rich, luxurious. Come on, be honest, you're in the temple of God. How many of us want to be rich and luxurious and opulent? Come on, put your hands up. Krishna's watching, okay? Well, now some hands are coming up. So we all want to be like Duryodhan with respect to our opulence and wealth and luxury and everything that we want in life. But at the same time, we call Duryodhan not quite a good example. Yudhishthir Maharaj seems to be a great example, although he didn't have anything that we are aspiring for. Right? We come to America and go through all the H-1B. Right? And then we go through so much more, Patel stores and whatnot. All of that for that little green leaf, the green card. I was going to talk about the Tulsi leaf, by the way. We do all of that for the comfortable living which Duryodhan had, which Ravana had. Yudhishthir did not. But we still consider Duryodhan to be a crazy person and Vibhishan and Yudhishthir Maharaj to be saintly. Why? Because the difference is not what they possessed. Who controlled the mind and who was controlled by their mind. That is the point. When Alexander the Great came to India and he went into a hermitage of a sage, it didn't happen immediately. Alexander the Great, he got off his horse and he sent his ministers to a sage and said, go and tell the sage that Alexander the Great wants to come and see him. The sage was busy meditating. And these ministers of the king went to the sage and said, dear Swamiji, Alexander the Great is waiting for you. And the Swami said, I am busy, let him wait. Alexander the Great was told by the ministers that, wait. Alexander said, how dare you say this? The minister said, not me. Well, the sage wants you to wait. What is he busy doing? The minister said, nothing. He's just having his eyes closed. Alexander the Great said, well, let me go and tell him who I am. He went into the hermitage of the sage and said, do you know who I am? And the sage said, of course I know who you are. You are the servant of my servant. Now the king picked his sword and said, this sadhu is going to lose his head today. How dare you call me the servant of your servant? I'll give you 10 seconds to prove it. And he placed this sword on the neck of the sage. And the sage said, by my meditation, by my chanting of mantras, I have controlled my mind and my anger. But unfortunately, you are controlled by that anger. So you become the servant of anger, who is my servant. So you are the servant of my servant. When Alexander the Great heard this, he surrendered not just the sword, but also his crown. And the sage told him, it's not about what we amass and collect outside that matters. It's about the state of mind and the peace that we can have within. What is the use if even Jesus says in the Bible, something to the effect that what gain does a man have if he wins the whole world but ends up losing his spirit soul? Imagine if we have a luxurious mansion, but our mind is not under our control. That person will make hell out of that heaven. And if there's a man who has a very peaceful mind, even in the middle of the forest, while he is in a predicament, he knows how to get out. What's the use of having a Lamborghini if the driver is drunk? You get the example? What's the use of having a Rolls Royce if the driver is drunk? Right? Similarly, if we have all the material opulences around, that's like having a Ferrari or a Bentley. But our mind is like the driver. If that's drunk, it's going to make every situation worse for us. Instead of accepting our flaws and our difficulties, it will end up criticizing, blaming, and passing the buck in every circumstance of life. And it makes hell out of heaven. Imagine having shoes which are very nice. How many of us want good shoes that you can... Now come on, be honest. Yeah, many of us are putting our hands up. And the rest of us, I believe you have very good shoes already. And that's why you don't need shoes. But for all of us who need shoes, imagine if we have very good shoes. That makes us feel confident. But imagine now you have pebbles and stones inside that shoe as you walk. Now what happens? Every step that we take, it's uncomfortable. However good the shoe may be, however good the road may be, if the pebbles inside are there, it makes everything difficult. Similarly, if our mind is uncontrolled, it's like having pebbles in the shoe of life. We may walk wherever we can, but because the mind is uncontrolled, like Duryodhan, he was amidst all the opulence of the palace, but he lived all his life complaining and blaming and criticizing and having vengeance and envy and violence and whatnot. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, and Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, if the mind is under our control, then it's our best friend. It lets us do what we want. But if the mind is not under our control, then it's the worst enemy. We can have the best spouse possible, the mind still looks for something better. We could have as much money as possible, but you still envy your neighbor. It's possible that Krishna's reigning, God's reigning blessings in our life, but we still find reasons to complain. That's the state of an uncontrolled mind. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, if we take shelter of spiritual sound, then it does the job of cleaning and cleansing and purifying the mind. Let's repeat. Our mind is like a mirror. And this example comes from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says our mind is like a mirror, which means if it's dusty, you're going to see only dust when you look into that mirror. So with a dusty mind, you look through anything in life, you just find dust. But if we can clean the dust of the mirror, then you can see yourself. You can see things around as they are. And the process to do that is to repeat spiritual sound vibration. If material sound vibration, like an alarm clock, can wake us up from material sleep, spiritual sound vibration wakes us up from spiritual slumber. Therefore, in the Bible, the first teaching of the Bible is, hallowed be thy name. O God, all glories to your name. And this is not just the teaching of our tradition, every tradition. This is the common thread which binds all religions to call out to the names of God. Recently, I was in the Middle East doing some services in the form of talks there. And I was so pleased to hear 5 times a day, there were sounds, loud calls, the azan calls in Islam, where it's an open call for everyone to leave drop everything that they're doing. It's a time where they come together and offer prayers to Allah. How amazing is that? Irrespective of whom you call as God and how the process is, one thing is common, that if we call out to the holy names of God, we will end up cleansing our impure mind. In the Gita, Krishna says, Yajnanam japa yajñosmi. Let's repeat this very slowly. Yajnanam japa yajñosmi. Krishna says in the Gita, of all the fire sacrifices, I am the sacrifice of calling out to the names. Now you may say, well, if you call out to Krishna's names, how is that a fire sacrifice? In a fire sacrifice, you need a spoon to offer the ghee, right? Typically when there's a housewarming ceremony or a marriage ceremony, you have the pujari sitting there, Om Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surayaha Diviva Chakshuratatam, right? Swaha, and we feel, oh wow, now something's happening. This is the real deal. And surely it is. Without any doubt, it is the real deal. But Krishna says, what if you don't have the opportunity to do that? It's not available for everyone at all times, but there's one fire sacrifice we all can perform, and that is to call out to the names of God. How does that happen? In a fire sacrifice, you need a few things. First, you need a yajna kunda, right? You need a place where you can pour the ghee. Second, you need a spoon, right? Third, you need mantras. 4, you need fire, right? And you need some faith. And also in traditional times, they would do animal sacrifice through the fire sacrifice. Not killing animals, please. They would take old animals, and through mantras, the pujari, the brahmana, had the power to offer the body of the animal into fire, remove the soul out of the body, and give that soul a newer, younger body. So there's no loss of life. That was the age-old tradition. But with time, the Brahminical culture deteriorated, and people started killing animals and throwing them into fire. That is against the scriptures, please. So in our Sankirtan Yajna, or the Yajna of chanting of the holy names, you have one spoon. What is that? The tongue. The tongue is the ladle, the spoon through which we offer. Now the question is, what is the Yajna Kunda where we are offering? Not one, we have 2 Yajna Kundas. The ears. So, through the spoon or the ladle of the tongue, we are offering the fire sacrifice, and through the ear, we are receiving the sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Congratulations. You just performed a fire sacrifice. Where the tongue is the spoon, we attentively heard, that's the Yajna Kunda. Now the question is, what is the fire flame? Oh, that is the name of God. Where you offer the ghee of your faith. Faithfully through the tongue we offer our ghee into the fire of God's names, which is received through the ears, which is the kunda. And as a result, there are benefits that come through that fire. And one out of those many benefits is this fire of the holy name burns to ashes all our sinful reactions. This fire brings in transcendental wisdom. This fire of bhakti or sankirtan gives in clarity and decision making. And this is why you can see when someone chants the holy name for a long time, they have clear vision in life. They have clarity. They know what is right and what is wrong. They are never confused. Even in the Ramayana, dear devotees, we can see the author of the Ramayana, Valmiki, he got empowered to write the text by chanting the name. And he didn't even chant it the straighter way. He didn't say Rama. He went the other way and he said Mara. And by chanting it the other way, if he can get empowered to write the text, what can be said for those who actually chanted the right way, with the right mood, with the intention to purify our heart and please God? Dear devotees, this is the essence of the 4 Vedas. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Let's give a big Haribo to His Grace Amarendra Prabhu. Haribo! So we have some time now for questions. We have 2 microphones, so I'm going to ask Shyam to carry one to the back of the temple. Does anybody have any questions? Oh yes, at the very back we've got one. Just wait 1 second for the microphone. Anybody here at the front while we bring the microphone to the back? Okay, we've got one more over here.
He's carrying the baton from one person to another. I think you'll have to push the button, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
If you hold the bottom of the mic, you might create some interference. So bring your hand to the top, please. Can someone be held there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have a question related to the meditation and the chanting. I know there is a scientific evidence that's done by many institutions, many universities conducted scientific research that calm meditation definitely improves the neuro connections in the brain. However, just wondering if there is equivalent research evidence that for sure, like, it helps me, the Hare Krishna mantra, but similar evidence, is there any evidence from a neuro connections improving and the calming the mind from a japa?
Brilliant question. There's actually a book called I'll mention the title of the book, so it's open, anyone can access. It's called The Rising Sun of the Holy Name. There's a book which is probably about 250 pages thick, and the whole book is on scientific evidence, mapping brain waves and the effect of chanting on the brain waves, and seeing how the parameters of the body are much bettered when they observe it over a wider spectrum of specimens or students. So that they take people from different walks of life, and they're all put through different tests, and those who are put through the meditative test of chanting Krishna's names, God's names, it shows at the end the result that they show the best parameters and the best effect possible, even over those who do silent meditation. So the book is called The Rising Sun of the Holy Name. So it has, including the graphs and the statistical data, everything is recorded in that book.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So my question is, why 16 rounds? What was the magic number 16 about?
It's 16 minimum.
I mean, but yes.
Srila Prabhupada actually said 64 because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said 64. The thing is, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to be invited for prasadam to different homes. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, well, I can come to a house, I can only come to the house of someone who is a lakpati. Lakpati means somebody who has 1 lakh. Now all the devotees who were inviting, they were like, what's wrong with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? We are all poverty-stricken beggars. How does he expect us to have 100,000, 1 lakh gold coins? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no. I am talking about 100,000 holy names of Krishna every day. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, if someone chants 100,000 holy names of Krishna every day, I will come to their house. This is in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So all our acharyas followed that tradition of chanting 100,000 names every day, up to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. Even Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj writes in his diary about Srila Prabhupada that he would chant 64 rounds himself, but then when the preaching increased, he slowly reduced it according to time, place, circumstance. Satswarup Maharaj in his Prabhupada Leelamrit, he writes, Srila Prabhupada said after initiation that everyone should chant 64 rounds. And devotees, 64 rounds? We can't do that. Prabhupada said, okay, 50%, 32 rounds. He said, Prabhupada, that's a lot of chanting. We don't have taste and time. Prabhupada said, 50% of that, 16 rounds, not a round less than that. Then they said, okay. So then that became like the universal standard for us. Prabhupada's minimum became our maximum. Right? So it's not about why 16. 16 Prabhupada said as the minimum. Of course, if we have more time and inspiration, then you're always welcome to chant more. No harm. That's the baseline below which we shouldn't fall. When a student asks why passing marks of 40, it's like, well, that's the baseline. Target for 100. Right? So nothing wrong in getting 90 and 80 and 70, but you shouldn't fall below 40. That's the point. So that's the universal organizational principle, because, it must be constant for everyone. Some are grihasthas, some are sannyasis, some are working outside, some are students, some are housewives. So that's the base minimum for spiritual initiation. But then if you have more time and holy days like today, like Ekadashi, we can always chant more.